Erica, with that, why don't we just kick it off and jump right in? This is direct sourcing demystified. This is really a topic that we found over the last year to year and a half is primarily the number one topic that our clients want to talk about. I mean, in almost every occasion. And yet there still seems to be so many questions around this. I think it's challenging for organizations to kind of wrap their arms around this topic and to figure out, all right, how do I get started? Right. I mean, would you agree, Erica?
Oh, absolutely. I think the global pandemic, of course, kind of put this at the forefront of organizations' minds, and everyone's trying to define it and be on the forefront of it. Of course, direct sourcing of sorts has been around for years, but in its more modern form, it's certainly a go-to strategy that everyone is trying to understand and implement.
Yeah, and great point, Erica. You're right. This has been around for years, whether it's names that are in your top drawer, an Excel file, or the platforms that we see today. Real quick on the agenda, we really want to just make sure that we simplify this topic. And so we're first going to dive into, like, why is it important to have a strong employer brand, and how do you use that in direct sourcing? What is direct sourcing? And we're going to provide some insights into the current landscape. What performance outcomes should you expect with a direct sourcing program? We'll just very lightly dive into the technology platforms that are out there. And then probably, most importantly, once you are equipped with all that, how do I get started? What do we do? So with that, let's just jump right in. And there are some key things that we need to talk about up front before we even get to direct sourcing. The first is that contingent talent is very much the same as like FTE talent when it comes to, how do you attract them? What's their interest? And I think we all know this now. Culture is now the candidate's number one currency when they're looking for an employer. And digital is their primary channel. It just is. And so 90% of contingent candidates are now using digital platforms as their primary means of finding work. And your culture is the number one thing they're looking for. It's like, what is the purpose of the organization? What would my purpose be there? What kind of impact can I have? And what's it like to work there? And they're doing this primarily digitally. So think, Glassdoor, TikTok, YouTube, your career page, which we'll get to here in just a minute. And 83% of organizations say they get it. Like, they understand that employer brand and candidate experience plays a significant role in attracting the right talent. But I think the big gap that we're seeing today, Erica, is 26% of companies, only 26% of companies have a digital strategy to communicate their brand story directly to the contingent workforce. So, 90% of contingent candidates are using these digital platforms. They're looking for information on an organization's culture. 83% of organizations get that. But yet here's this gap of only 26% have a digital strategy to address it. So that's one of the big gaps that we're going to talk through today. And Erica, with that, why don't you kind of walk us through employer value proposition?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Patrick, those statistics definitely show that the gap between the users and access to digital platforms and how they're looking at prospective companies. And then there's the lack of the employer value proposition to the contingent workforce. So, just for starters, right, to kind of set the stage, because there's a direct correlation here in the success and using your employer brand for direct sourcing. So we thought this is a good place to start. Simply put, an employer value prop is an engaging appeal to prospective employees. What about your company is going to make it the best place to work, the employer of choice, have a fabulous culture, and really stimulate interest in those three key items that we have listed there: your mission, culture, Patrick, you hit on that already, and then also career development. What's in it for me today, and where can I see myself going in the future, along with the purpose, right?
Yeah.
These are so important. And oftentimes a mission exists from a full-time perspective, right? I think you would agree, probably, Patrick. Any organization, you can go to their website and find in their about section, or even a mission section, right, what their purpose is. And it's easy to find, but it's not necessarily tailored to the contingent workforce. And so we strongly feel that this is a really solid starting place, and really a gut check for organizations to be looking at how they're engaging the contingent workforce, leveraging their digital footprint, and attracting talent from a temporary perspective in a flexible, to meet their flexible needs.
Yeah. And Erika, I couldn't agree with you more. And we've seen really large brands beginning to kind of grab onto this concept and say, okay, we do have an employer value proposition, and we're not going to change that. But what we are going to do in specific locations, specifically for the contingent workforce, we're going to detail it a little bit more and take some additional steps at local levels to make sure we're really engaging the contingent workforce so that they can become the number one employer for that talent as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, just to continue to drive this home a bit further, and why having a strong employer value proposition is important, just key statistics here. Alignment, according to Deloitte, 23% of executives state that their company is really, really good at aligning their workers' goals to their organizational purpose. And, that leads into the next statistic, that if you have a strong employer value proposition and it ties closely into your goals for your workforce, you can reduce turnover by up to 70%, which is huge, right? And then ultimately, this kind of is a good segue into direct sourcing, but increasing your referrals, that's word of mouth, is huge. And so what we find is, we're hearing from Link Humans, of course, is that with a strong employer value prop, then you could increase your referrals by 47%. So, that certainly gets me going and geeked out about making sure that we're talking about this topic. And then, as I mentioned, it directly ties into the employer branding of direct sourcing.
Yeah. And Erika, I think direct sourcing, the unique thing is it really does, especially some of the platforms that are available today, really does allow you to enhance that referral capability. I think it's something that most companies struggle with to some degree, but I think now the tools exist to really capitalize on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so with that, I think we have our first poll. And Ben and/or Joelle, can you maybe help us with this poll, the audience poll? The question here being, what is your organization's current knowledge level of direct sourcing for contingent workers? And that's either a limited knowledge, some knowledge, or expert level knowledge.
So I was going to say, Patrick, we probably expect this to be a little bit all over, a range here.
Yeah.
Most commonly, some knowledge, right? I think that's appropriate. That's why we're all here. We get the concepts, and it's also all the buzz right now. I'd been on LinkedIn, and just everyone right now seems to be hosting different webinars and insights into direct sourcing. So it's definitely a hot topic.
Yeah, it really is. This is actually really good, because I think the needle has moved. When we see some knowledge, that's really good to hear. It's, looking roughly like 70-30, 70%, have some knowledge. But those expert level knowledge, 13%, would love to pick your brains at some point in time. So no, that's great. Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to move forward here. Good information.
Yeah.
Here we go.
So with that, as Patrick mentioned, we really wanted to demystify this topic of direct sourcing and simplify all of the variations of definitions out there, and really give your organization a good opportunity to figure out where to start. And if you're not already thinking about this type of strategy, how to get there. So at a very high level, we've taken, the autonomy to define direct sourcing as using your employer brand to build a talent pool of qualified contingent workforce candidates that you can deploy more rapidly and cost effectively than traditional recruitment models. So when you're thinking about this, there are a couple different types of candidates that we can pool within direct sourcing. Most, I would say, commonly known would be known talent. So your alumni, retirees, silver medalists, those types of individuals that have already been identified for a company. Maybe they've worked there already. They're proven talent. They know the culture. Now what we're seeing with the evolution of AI and the tech platforms that are available, you can also tap into unknown talent and recruit and attract new pools of talent that maybe you hadn't had access to before without the use of a tech platform. That helps drive referrals, as we talked about. And then, passive candidates too. Pools are a really great opportunity to have, that passive talent sitting there. They're expressing their interest in your brand, in your company, but maybe they're wrapping up a project of their own someplace else, and so they're in this pool, ready to be available for an opportunity that may come up as their skill sets meet an organization's needs. So that's high level on what the definition is. And Patrick, I think you're going to dive a little bit further into what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk through that. And first, to understand it, let's, on the left-hand side of the screen, let's talk through kind of that traditional contingent model where you have great staffing organizations, which, by the way, remain very valuable even with this new model. Those great staffing companies are vital to your success. But in that traditional kind of realm, if you will, organizations would go to their contingent staffing partners and they would say, hey, we have requirements, we have needs. And then those staffing organizations would go out to the market, communicate with candidates and say, hey, there's opportunities for work. This is who our client is. Let's get you connected. And so there would be a connection point that way. With direct sourcing, and think about direct sourcing as just being a part of your strategy. It's something that you're integrating into your strategy. Most organizations are somewhat plugging it in at first at a small level. It becomes just like a part of your supply base. But now what you're able to do, instead of someone else telling your story to the market, now what you're able to do is to plug into a technology platform that allows you to really take an omni-channel approach to promoting your talent brand, to telling your story. You can communicate open requisitions, but you can also simply just tell your story through all sorts of channels. Think of it in terms of the messaging that you're sending out, your brand and your job requirements, your job openings, going out through hundreds of job boards all at the same time, being released out through social media. Actually, once you have candidates opting in, one of the most powerful tools is SMS texting. And so now you have this means of being able to tell your story directly to candidates, inviting them into a talent pool that you're creating, either for niche positions, very specific positions, or maybe just your organization as a whole. And you're able to go out to known talent, That's talent that you know, maybe someone who's come off an assignment that you rated high, and you've invited them into your talent pool. Could be silver medalist, alumni, and retirees, whatever that known talent might be. It could also be sourced talent, recruited talent that, maybe you didn't have a role for right away, but you've invited them into the talent pool. And then also referrals. It's amazing, but once you can automate the entire referral process, even the payment of like referral rewards, it's amazing what that does to the number of hires that you will get through referrals. So just think of being able to build a talent pool with all these different sources. And then once they're in your talent pool, using those same means of communication, your career page, SMS text, social, email, to curate that talent, to make sure that you keep them warm and continue telling your story so that when they're ready and when you're ready to connect on a role, you've got that population there and you're not starting brand new, going out to the marketplace and trying to attract new talent. Erika, was that clear? Yeah, please help.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a couple of good points that I wanted to just highlight, right? So one of the key differentiators between a traditional model and the direct sourcing model is the power behind your organization's brand. That's really why we started with having a strong employer value prop. And I say that because if you've been in the staffing industry for any length of time, or maybe you currently are, you know that as a recruiter in a program, sometimes you have situations where you would love to be able to post a job advert that isn't generic, right? And you're probably having conversations with those end clients about, can we please utilize your name and your brand? And we all know in the industry that the employer brand is so helpful in attracting that talent. So with that in mind, when you segue into a direct sourcing strategy, you're absolutely leveraging that brand and putting it out there. And that just in of itself helps with the attraction significantly. So that's, critical. And then, outside of the being able to tap into talent quickly, more quickly than other traditional models, is the business efficiencies. Patrick, you talked about driving referrals and bonuses even, and the tracking of that. The mechanism, of course, is having a strong tech platform, which we'll talk about later. But that platform and a formalized pool, because we talked about how direct sourcing years ago, maybe informal, maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. There's not a whole lot of automation there, right? And so this type of strategy allows you to improve on your efficiencies in more than one capacity.
Yeah, well said, Erika. And that's, I think we could talk for days about what we see on the screen here, but I think, the key is both of these models work well together. What we see is organizations saying, I'm just going to start off and my goal is going to be, I want 5% of my contingent hires to come through direct sourcing. Others say, I want to get it up to 20%. We even see one organization, a rather large organization with very niche high-end skills, who's been able, just over the course of a couple of years, has been able to go from 0 to 75% of their hires coming through direct sourcing. And they have access to talent that they just never had before because they're building really productive tools. So I think the opportunities now to maybe go at the market in a little bit different way than you used to, but still using that same powerful brand that you have today and telling your story a little bit more effectively and directly, that can make a big difference for you in terms of your talent.
Yeah, and Patrick, one last thought too. You hit on something. It's important that the strategy you take with direct sourcing is not necessarily, okay, we want to do direct sourcing, everything needs to funnel through it. You can, as you mentioned, right? It's a supplement to your critical staffing partners. But then even further, it doesn't have to be daunting. You can start with a specific skill set where you have, higher volume needs, and you test it to look at your pool, match it to the skill sets there, and start with, a specific area, and then see some successes, and then grow the direct sourcing engine from there, right? It doesn't have to be one of these things where you just all of a sudden it's, you're turning on the direct sourcing engine. We have this pool and they're going to fill all the roles. I think a more strategic approach to it would be to have a very focused set of skills that you want to dial in on first, see the success there, and drive it to other parts of the organization.
Yeah. And Erika, you're building a direct sourcing strategy right now for a global Fortune 500 organization who's really taking that path, right? Who's saying, we just want to get our feet wet and get started in this, and then figure out how we can grow it from there. But and I think that's the key. I think you hit on something that's really important, Erika. Most organizations that we speak with, they really want to know more, but there's this, kind of trepidation of like taking the first step of like, I just don't know enough. It feels nebulous to me. How do I get started? And so in just a minute, we'll kind of talk about that. How do you get started?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. First, there's, let's go through kind of what the landscape is today, and what we can tell you right now. This is still in its infancy. Like if the 70% that said, hey, we know some things about it. I think you can take comfort in the fact that's where everyone is. Most people know a little bit about it, or they know something about it, but they don't know everything yet. And so this is still in its infancy. Give you just some key statistics here. 6% of Fortune 500 companies use their corporate career page to attract, engage contingent talent. Now, we expect that to grow significantly over the next 12 to 18 months, especially as organizations begin to look at talent more holistically. Just to say, we need talent that can do this. Where's the best place to go get that talent? Approximately 16 to 21% of companies have a defined direct sourcing strategy today. And I can tell you, we have visibility into this. Most organizations have started small. Think, 5 to 10% of their population or their hires in the contingent world right now might be coming from direct sourcing. But SIA, Staffing Industry Analysts, just released a great report on this. In the report, they have a great statistic that says, look, 60% of companies are going to explore direct sourcing over the next 2 years. And I think one of the things that was very telling about that statistic was it was by far the number one initiative for everyone that they polled. So, the number two wasn't even close. Everyone is saying this is top of mind for the next 2 years.
Yeah, it was a resounding, number one strategy that they looked at. That report that SIA put out in partnership with Ray's Recruiting and Live Hire was phenomenal. It has some really great insights there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what they found also is that if you've got a direct sourcing strategy, it's impacting your overall outcomes, which we're going to get into here in just a few minutes. But direct sourcing leaders outperform laggards in key measured outcomes by an average of 4 to 1. So direct sourcing hires, even when it's a small portion of your hires, it's having a significant impact on performance overall. And think about just like when you talk about performance, like the attraction of candidates, like what does your candidate pool look like? How many candidates are you attracting? Your overall cost, which we'll talk about that here in a minute, because that's a key thing. Time to fill, and then quality and retention. And then finally here, Erika, one of the studies outlined that 63% are using direct sourcing for greater access to talent. So often when we start our conversations with organizations, their initial thought is, I want to drive costs down, or I need to like speed up my process. And I think the way that, Erika, you and I have talked about this, those are great byproducts of direct sourcing, you know, speed and cost. But essentially, you know, the number one thing that you get out of this is just better access to higher quality talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, part of the access to the talent, especially known talent, some of the great there are just, they already know your culture. They, you know, so even there are so many different measures of cost savings and things, but that's, you know, another thing to consider when you're tapping into a talent pool that's already been there. Their learning curve is going to be much quicker than someone brand new off the street. Now, that's still a part of the strategy, right? But to your point, attraction and quality have been seeing such significant improvements with this type of strategy.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think that brings us to our next poll, which will then kind of get us into our next topic around performance. But you know, let's go ahead and turn on the polling. And here's the question: does your company have a current direct sourcing strategy in place? So just curious, and I think it'll be good for all of us to be able to kind of see where everyone's at. So it's yes, we have a current strategy in place, or no, but we're currently working on putting a strategy in place, or no, we haven't even begun to talk yet, which, you know, by the way, that's where we see so many companies today, which is fine. But let's open up the polls and let's see where everyone is.
38% have a current strategy in place. That's
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a little bit surprising. Like that's a significant uptick, wouldn't you say, Erika?
Yeah, I would say, especially, you know, when we looked at the first poll about the knowledge of direct sourcing,
Yeah,
that's great. I mean, leading the way there. This is certainly something to be on the forefront of.
yeah, that's great. All right, these are good numbers to see, and thank you. So I do think, you know, I think this is a really good measure of just how fast this is moving as well, Erika, because SIA just put their report out. It's fresh, new information, but I think organizations are really moving pretty rapidly to deploy some type of direct source strategy, even just to kind of get in the game a little bit. All right.
I think too, Patrick, I was going to say, you know, we're seeing this 47% that currently have a strategy in place. And, you know, I keep saying this, but there's this evolution of direct sourcing in general too, from spreadsheets to more formalized program to now you have several tech stacks and integrations and things. So it would be interesting at another time to understand kind of how evolved or sophisticated those programs are for those of you who do have it in place.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Erika. Yeah, you're right. That's probably an entirely different webinar and a polling question. I wish we would have thought to ask, but that's a really good point. So, all right, why don't we dive back in? We're going to get into some performance discussion here because at the end of the day, this is really where the rubber meets the road. If you're going to have a direct sourcing program, it should make you better at what you do, right? And so let's talk about this for just a minute. One of the keys here has to be candidate experience. You know, what's their experience like in terms of trying to engage you as an employer or you engaging that passive workforce, but also with them going through the process, the interview process, the onboarding process, and then the care that they get once they're onboarded. On average, with the contingent workforce, you tend to see around 6 out of 10 on, you know, candidate experience. Best in class, they're getting all the way up near 8, around 7.9. And then what we're actually seeing with direct sourcing performance is that normally there is a really enhanced strategy. Not only is the process automated and it really speaks to candidates kind of in a language that they're using, you know, using their phone, using digital platforms. It's simpler, it's faster. But also we're seeing that organizations are being more thoughtful around that engagement wrapper and the compliance wrapper that they're putting around their direct sourcing program. And so what you're seeing there is typically around an 8.8 out of 10 on candidate experience, which is outstanding.
Yeah, Patrick, to expand the 8.8 there with candidate experience and the engagement wrapper is so important, because when you have a platform that can capture and give you a direct line of visibility into a talent pool, not only are you able to tap into them when you have a staffing need, but you can also continue to engage with them, to keep them warm and give them latest news. And, to your point, you can be very thoughtful in what that looks like as an opportunity comes up for them to come work for you.
Yeah. Great point, Erika. And I think we all have experienced that. We have great candidates that you don't ever want to see them leave forever, right?
Right.
And so this provides an opportunity to make sure that there's still a connection and a relationship there. Time to fill, what this simply means is, if you were to go out on your own and kind of launch an initiative to improve your time to fill, on average, you could, probably improve your time to fill by 7.5%. If you were to fall into that best in class realm, it would be around 11%. But what we're seeing with direct sourcing performance, because you already have the candidates engaged and you have a watchful eye on you as the employer, these are very real numbers, by the way. But what we're seeing is organizations improving their time to fill by 32%, which is pretty phenomenal. So, and then finally, quality of hire. That's one of the things that kind of goes back to EVP, or employer value proposition for the contingent workforce. Is one of the reasons that you want to have a great EVP for the contingent workforce is the same as FTEs. Is, what you want to tell that audience exactly what it's like to work for you. And while you're trying to attract top talent, you're also wanting to tell candidates that might not be a good fit, hey, this might not be a good fit, right? You don't want to have to bring someone all the way through the process and put them into an assignment only to feel like, for whatever reason, there wasn't a match. And so with that component of this, I think that really helps with the quality of hire, but also just making sure that through the process, someone signing up for your talent pool and being curated and understanding exactly who you are, what the role is, how they fit into the organization. On average, what we see in programs is about a 59%, redeployment rate. In best in class programs, we're estimating it's around 72%. But with direct sourcing performance, what we're seeing is, around an 87% redeployment rate for talent, which means when they come off of an assignment, that you say, I want this person back on an assignment as fast as we can get them. Erika, anything to add there?
Yeah, quality of hire, I think you had already talked about the statistic in one of the other slides, that the research that SAIA put out is, that 4-to-1 lead on each one of these things, really, where we see improvement and better results with direct sourcing. So, these are all of the reasons why it's so popular to be talking about, and why we would encourage your organization to, start strategizing on how to implement this and integrate direct sourcing into your contingent programs.
Yeah. And as we speak to key leaders and, really strategic thinkers for organizations in terms of how do we attract and keep the best talent, almost all of them say, look, we're doing this because we want better access to talent. We want the right talent, and we want better access to talent. Cost savings is great. Speed is great. And those are actually things that are necessary. Like, it's important for all of us to consistently, become more efficient where we can, and to drive cost out where we can. But those tend to end up being byproducts at the end of the day versus kind of the main objective. So I know we've talked through that, but wanted to reiterate it one more time. Okay, this is our last poll. So what is the, and after saying that, look, if cost is the main driver, no one's going to be upset here with your organization. Right. You might have specific requirements that just say, we have to drive cost out and this is the way to do it. So that's great if that's the case. But we'd love to hear from you for those organizations that you either have a program or you're thinking about a program. We'd love to know, what's the key direct sourcing driver for your organization? Is it greater access to talent? Is it speed? Is it quality of talent, or cost? So why don't we open up the polls and let's see where we are here. Oh, look at that.
Yep.
Yeah, quality of talent.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, that's outstanding.
Well, I mean, that makes sense when you think about redeploying your known talent, because you've already built a level of comfort with them. They've become proven performers. And why not, if there's a way to leverage bringing them back when you're able to, tapping into that?
Yeah, no doubt about it. It is interesting to me the difference between greater access to talent and the quality of talent. It's like overwhelmingly people are saying, yeah, the quality of talent is key. Yeah. So very interesting. All right. And thank you so much for your input there. Very interesting. Okay, Erika, we're almost there, and then we can open this up for questions after this. But technology platforms. Why don't you start us off here, Erika?
Yeah, I think we've said this multiple times throughout, or hinted at platforms, and this is certainly an evolution through time as to how direct sourcing has evolved. But it's really important to make sure that you have a powerful tech platform in place. Not all of them are created equally. So our intent here is, as you begin exploring your options and looking into the market at what's out there, is to arm you with questions that you should be asking with your technology platform partners, and how they fit into your organization, right? So one of the things we talked about this on the candidate experience slide, but the experience is what is going to drive retention and keep the attraction going, whether it's by word of mouth or, wanting to continue to work for your organization. So you certainly want a technology platform in place that's user-friendly, and it creates a superior experience to other platforms. It's important to also have data intelligence integrated in with that platform, so that you can see when you are doing, say, a mass communication for a newsletter or something along those lines, what does the success rate of that look like, right? So, the candidate experience, the way the platform looks and feels to a user is important. But then the follow-up of the data on how successful you are and the measurement of that is equally as important, right? So that would make sure that your partners that you're considering have the capability to give you those types of insights, because you'll be able to tweak your strategy and your approach based on what you're seeing with engagement of your outreach. The other thing that we talk about too, as far as driving business efficiencies, and one of the things that, leads into speed and agility with regards to direct sourcing, is a tech platform's capability to integrate with your existing technology. So in cases where you have an MSP in place with a vendor management system, say a Fieldglass or a Beeline or some of those technologies out there. It could also be HR-driven technology, so your HRIS. And, for an advanced solution, maybe it's integration into a career page and things of that nature. So that's a huge advantage of having a partner that has integration capabilities. It just further facilitates, efficiencies and ease throughout the process.
Yeah, absolutely, Erika. I think everything that we work with these days needs to have some level of integration so things are seamless. And another just important aspect to this is, what reach does the platform have into the market? And more importantly, what reach does it give you into the market? And so specifically what we mean by that is, there are platforms out there that actually, if you want to post a requisition through the platform to help build up your pool, they'll have reach to over 200 job sites. They'll have reach into niche diversity sites, and maybe even niche skill sites for you. And so I think it's important to ask, to get alignment with your specific objectives, how do you hit the marketplace? If we want to have an omni-channel approach for contingent labor, how are you going to help us get that, right? And I think that fourth thing here is, what feature sets are in place? And what we mean by that is, you might have some shift work. And so does the platform support shift type work for like maybe light industrial or call center type positions? Does it have, if you've got initiatives related to the diversity of your contingent workforce, does it have DE&I capability? And so those are just some of the functions that you want to kind of be thinking about and exploring with your technology partner on this. And with that in mind, we're not going to go deep into this, but we'll just share. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but here are just some of the tech platforms. If you're looking to get started, do some research here. And you'll find other tech platforms, I promise you, once you start researching these, but like Will Hire, WorkLlama, Live Hire, TalentNet, Oply, Upwork, begin to research here and find out the capabilities and the functionality. And I promise you, there's a lot of technology out there. So you will find more once you begin to research these here. And then Erika, finally, how do I get started? Like, what do we do? And that's probably the number one question that Erika and I get is, what do we do? Like, how do we do this? So the first thing is, look, just get a small team together. A large team might have too many voices, right? So get a small influential team together and start researching this and just start the journey. Just get started. Just start educating yourself on this. We feel like it's just vital to a good direct sourcing strategy. Figure out your organization's employer value proposition. Find out if they're, modifying it in any way for certain locations or for the contingent workforce. But just, understand what it is and make sure that you've got the ability to use that in the way that you're now going to go to market for candidates. And have a conversation with your contingent workforce partners. Just ask them, hey, what are you seeing others doing with direct sourcing? Can we set up a 30-minute or a 1-hour call? I want you to educate me. Talk with one of the technology platforms. Ask for a demo. A demo is a great way, even if you're just kind of at zero, to say, I want to learn more. And after that demo, it's just amazing all the context that begins to come to light. Start small and build incrementally. We're seeing most organizations saying, we want to start like here with this skill set or in these locations, and really kind of define the starting line, if you will, so that they can build success there and then grow it. And then one of the things that we see with every single program that we're a part of out there is they all have a compliance wrapper. Like they need, like, okay, you've got this talent, but now how do you engage them? And so having an employer of record, maybe even an agent of record, if it's 1099 work that you're doing, but have that partner that you can build, that you can integrate into this process, and they're there to be that compliance wrapper for all of your direct sourcing hires. And so with that, I think we might get a gold star, Erika, from HCI. I think this is the first time that we've finished with a true 10 minutes of Q&A. Normally we're finishing at with 3 or 4 minutes left, but this is perfect. Before we go to Q&A, Erika, anything else you want to add here?
No, I think this summarizes things well. It doesn't need to be a daunting undertaking. I think the key here is start educating yourself, draw up some interest and influence internally, and build a case from there. The stats and the outcomes that you'll see with direct sourcing are pretty substantial. So that obviously is helpful, but ultimately start small, start the research, and go from there.
And Erika, I think the main thing that led all of your sentences right there was just start. Like, just start somewhere. But just see if you can, get this moving within your organization. And with that, we're down to Q&A. And so Joelle and or Ben, there might be some questions that have come in, and so we're happy to answer anything that's come in so far.
Great. There sure are a few questions. Thank you so much, Patrick and Erika, for that really enlightening presentation. So now we'll be taking a few questions from our listeners. So the first couple questions are really about a definition of terms. Can you provide a little bit more clarity on what exactly you mean by contingent? There are a couple of questions asking that specifically.
Oh, yeah. Erika, do you want me to start?
Sure. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah. So the contingent workforce, that tends to be, some people call it the temporary workforce. It's talent that you're bringing into your organization. You're not the employer of record. They're being sourced through some other organization who is the employer of record. That's really the main thing. Is some organizations call it temporary labor, some call it contingent labor. Erika, you might be able to expound on that and maybe fill in a few more of the gaps.
No, you went exactly where I was going to go.
Okay.
In my past life, temporary labor was commonly used, contract labor. Really, yeah. The other thing to think about too is this isn't necessarily specific to a US W-2, right? This could also be used to identify other flexible type contractors, like an independent contractor, right?
Absolutely, it could. Yeah. Like the 99s. So we just touched on that briefly at the end with the compliance wrapper, but absolutely. Joelle, I hope that answers the question to that listener. If for some reason it doesn't, please ask the question again and we'll address it more comprehensively.
Okay, another term that may need some clarification, seeing this question a couple of times coming in. What is a silver medalist?
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Erika.
I can take this, Patrick.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, some of these definitions, right, Patrick, for you and I feel like we've just been swimming in this world for a while. So these are great points of clarification. Silver medalist would be a candidate who, it could even be identified on an FTE basis. So whether it's for a full-time role or one of these temporary roles, kind of a runner-up, right, Patrick? Somebody who hit all of the boxes that you're looking for in an ideal candidate, but maybe there was just one superstar right above them. And it's good enough talent that you want to retain them and keep them, in your pool, if you will, to tap into when another need arises. So Patrick, you had talked about when you get that really great candidate, you don't want to let them go, right? And so we would call that a silver medalist if they weren't maybe the first choice, but this gives you the ability to, outside of a spreadsheet, capture them and tap into the talent.
Well done, Erika. And please accept both of our apologies, because we do unknowingly use terms and lingo that we probably should spell out a little bit more clearly. So good questions, and thank you.
Well, thank you for your responses. All right, another one coming from a viewer. Can you talk a little bit more about integration to a current ATS, applicant tracking system?
So, each of the, without knowing very specific ATSs and kind of what you're trying to accomplish, I would just say that, the technology platforms that are out there can integrate with, we'll take a VMS or a vendor management technology as an example. So when you have an MSP that helps manage your temporary labor and all of your staffing needs, they usually have a VMS, Fieldglass, for example, that has all the job postings and requisitions, and those get pushed out to your suppliers. So when we talk about integration with technology, the platform it's beneficial when it can automatically integrate with those things, so that as a job posting is made available, whether it be, through a VMS or, another ATS or HRIS system, it automatically pushes out that requisition. From there, it can automate things such as posting to job boards and pushing notifications and matching with AI technology to your talent pool. So trying to keep it high level, because that is something that I think it's an important capability, but the functionality of it can change based on your needs and how it's working.
Yeah. And Erika, I think also we talked about, like, what are some of the things you need to be researching in these technologies that align with your objectives, and integrating with an ATS would certainly be a key objective. And I think it's one of the things that as you research these technologies, just to talk to them about, hey, tell me what the integration looks like into our specific ATS.
Yes.
And how challenging is that? How much effort has to go into that? And then also, what is it that you want to integrate? It might be everything from even pre-onboarding through onboarding through offboarding, or it might just be a few components. But absolutely, that would be one of those key things that you want to talk to your technology platform or your potential partners about. But very good question, because we do think the integration with the HRIS systems are just key here.
Definitely. Okay, thank you. And last question, this is a particularly interesting one. What types of skills really work best for direct sourcing?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. I'll start, Erika. I want you to follow up with that.
Yeah.
So I think there's no right answer for any single organization. Every company is going to be different on this. But what I can tell you is, here's what we're seeing organizations do. We're seeing companies say, you know what, we're having a challenging time with maybe this skill set or these two skill sets. Now, that skill set might be something very, very like a high level talent. So for example, we're seeing a large healthcare organization with highly qualified talent. They're having a very tough time bringing that talent through the door. And they've decided to go a direct sourcing route with that talent. It's always been a challenge for them. This is the client, or this is the organization that we talked about earlier that has moved all the way up to 75% of their hires are now coming through direct sourcing. And that's just very unique, niche, high-end healthcare related talent. Now, we're also seeing other organizations where they have just high volume talent. And so think about call centers, think about light industrial type positions where you need a whole lot of people all at once. And having that talent pool already prepared, so that when you have a need for 150 people or 200 people all at the same time, we're also seeing organizations effectively, build direct sourcing strategies for those types of skills as well. So I think it really depends on your company. It can be anything from, really unique niche high-end talent to just kind of, I need high volumes of this skill. And probably everything in between. Erika, you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. A manufacturing, let's just say a pharma manufacturing company is going to have much different skills than a software development firm. And so, I think it's hard to kind of zero in on a specific skill set. I think one of the things to be considering when you're looking at populations within your organization to see if this is a good fit is the repetitiveness of the need, right? So Patrick, you mentioned high volume, which is a really great example, but you also need this role, just given its nature, right? You have a pool of people. If you have one role that is a one-off need, it's probably not something that's compatible with direct sourcing. The point here is something that you can, or where your needs are proactive and you know what type of things to expect in the future, or the role is repeatable or recurring. That is an important consideration when you're looking at what makes the most sense to put into a direct sourcing model.
Awesome. Thanks so much again. Great answers to those questions. To the viewers whose questions we did not get to, we apologize. We will, of course, have to quickly start to close now. Just a reminder to HCI members, today's webcast has been approved for HRCI and SHRM credit, as well as for HCI recertification. Your credits for attending this webcast will soon show up in your My HCI profile under the transcript tab. While you're there, don't forget to check out hci.org for even more insights, as well as information on our certifications and events. I'd like to say one more thank you to our presenters today, Patrick and Erika, for doing such a wonderful job, and to all of the good people at TalentWave, a People 2.0 company. And I'd also like to thank you, of course, our webcast viewer. Thanks for spending an hour with us. We will see you next time.